Good afternoon, everyone. This is David Zavislin, the CAD manager here at Nolte Associates, and today we're going to take a look at the second half of our AutoCAD upgrade training session. Jumping through the PowerPoint here. Last week, in the first hour, we talked a little bit about some of the file compatibility issues between 2009 and 2007. And the main thing we discussed was the problems that we're going to encounter deal more with the land desktop and Civil 3D objects like contours and surfaces and points, and not so much with the AutoCAD drawing files. Both versions open the same drawing file. We also gave you a tour of the AutoCAD interface, looked at the Quick Properties command, the Modeless Layer Properties Manager, and also the layer property overrides that are available when we work in viewports. Didn't get a chance to look at Action Recorder last week, so I'll look at that this week. And then we finished up last week by looking at XREF clipping, where we're able to clip an internal or inverted boundary within an external reference. For today's session, I'd like to start off with the 3D viewing enhancements. There's a couple of new tools for controlling the display of our 3D views. We will look at a utility called the Action Recorder, which lets us record keyboard commands without having to know any AutoLisp or scripting. We will then move on to the new Annotative Text functionality, which lets us control our text height based on view or drawing scale as opposed to giving explicit fixed heights like we're used to in the past. We'll look at a few of the new MText enhancements, some new dimension enhancements, a few table enhancements, and if time permits, we will look at the PDF extension for Civil 3D 2009, which is a new PC3 or print driver that lets us control the resolution and the size of our generated PDFs, and also allows us to incorporate layer information into the PDF. And then it also has what is called the PDF underlay, which allows us to reference a PDF file in a similar manner that you would do a raster image or a DWF file. So pretty neat stuff. Hopefully I can get to it all. Usually don't, but we'll give it a shot today. All right, that ends the slideshow portion of this, and I'm going to jump now into my AutoCAD 2009, and I'm running it in the Civil 3D 2009 application, and the profile I'm using is my Civil 3D 2009 profile here. All right, what I would like to do is we're going to look at the 3D viewing functionality first. So I've got this surface model and a roadway corridor that I modeled in Civil 3D. And I'm going to quickly jump up to a 3D view here just so we can avoid having to do a whole lot of view changes. Commands we're used to manipulating the view is going to be the orbit command, which I have here on my toolbar. And we'll let that come up. And we get the usual circle here, and we can manually pick and rotate about the center of our screen. So that's what we're used to seeing in terms of view manipulation. We're also used to using the pan and zoom command. Well, they've added a couple of new ones in Civil 3D, or not Civil 3D, in AutoCAD 2009. And to access those, I'm going to switch my view style, and I'm going to go to the conceptual visual style, which will shade my surface models using their layer color. And I do apologize, my laptop at the resolution I'm running at does not do a very decent job of rendering, and we get these little black lines that you see all over the surfaces, and it's just that's my display driver. It's not necessarily AutoCAD. You do get a little bit better modeling when I work on a workstation as opposed to my laptop. In a 3D visual style such as realistic or conceptual or the 3D line, you will get this object over here in the upper right corner, and this is called the view cube. And what it allows you to do is pick on different edges of this, and it will set your view based on where you pick. So I picked on the upper southeast corner, and it rotated my view down to a southeast corner. And if I pick on other corners of the cube, you'll see it'll rotate my model accordingly. Or if I pick on the corner edge, or the edge between two, it will pivot to those values. So you can see I can quickly rotate to a preset view. I can pick on the front box panel here, rotate me to front view, and if I want to go back to plan view, I can click on the little arrow on top of my box, and I'm back to plan view. And then I can also, while I'm in a plan mode, we get these little arrows here in the upper right corner where I can rotate it in 90-degree increments. Okay, and let me go back to one of my corners here, and I'll let it regen. Other things I can do, if I get to a view that I like, I can right-click on the cube, and I have some menu options here, and I can say save that current view as home. So we'll set that view to my home view, and then if I click and I'm holding my mouse button now, I can do real-time movement on my cube. So I'm got the mouse button depressed, and I'm just moving my mouse around. But if you get to a view that's kind of confusing and backwards or upside down, I get this little icon as I hover on my cube with a little house. If I click on that, it resets back to that home view. So a nice quick way to get to my home view. All right, and I can grab, if I want to stay at this angle, I can pick on one of the cardinal directions here. And as I move my mouse, now again, I have my mouse depressed. I move it from side to side, and it'll pivot my view in the XY plane. So I can stay above my view, and then as I rotate, you'll see it stays at the same relative location. All right. When I'm ready to go back to plan view, I click on top, and I'm back to plan view. Okay, so hopefully you guys are seeing a real nice way to manipulate our views. All right, so that's one of the new 3D viewing enhancements. The other one we'll look at today is this item down here on our status bar, and it's called the steering wheel. And it's a little button here has, I guess, a bunch of little circular components on it. Let me go ahead and click on that. And that will bring the steering wheel up to where my cursor is located. So you see, as I move my cursor around, the steering wheel object goes with it. All right, so what I want to do is a couple things I start off with is there's an option here for center. So what I'll do is I'm going to pick center, and then I'm going to say I'll pick on, put my cursor right there on the roadway, and it'll actually move that to the center of my view. So now if I come and do zoom, okay, and that looks terrible. And I hope I didn't just crash my video driver here. Let me refresh that. All right, my AutoCAD does not seem to like that. Let me go back to restore my 3D view here. Again, some issues with my video driver and also the 3D views. So what I do is I went to a, boy, it's not going to show me any, well, let me go back to a 2D wireframe. We'll go ahead and just do it in a 2D mode. Okay, well, it's not going to do it today. What you'll have to do is I've got some videos showing that, but the way the steering wheel object works is you then click in those different panels, and you can zoom in and out. You can orbit about your control point. You can do a pan. You can also do a look where you actually pivot the camera as opposed to pivoting the model about the target point. Now, I apologize for not being able to show you that, but do look at the online handouts. I do think I have some videos showing some of the usage of that. If not, I'll get those in there. All right, well, I'm going to move on then. I'm going to waste a lot of time, and then again, it's just some issues with my video driver and the GoToWebinar interface. But I'm going to take a look at Action Recorder now. So let me open up my drawing for Action Recorder here. And actually I'm going to go into my sheet drawings. And I've got this drawing. I've got sheet number 4 that I've already set up. And actually let's go ahead and open both of those. So I'm going to open up both my sheet drawings. All right, so in my IPO4 sheet, I'm going to switch to that one. This one I've already gone through. I've attached all my external references, and I've set up my title block and my viewports. And what I did is I actually recorded those processes so that when I go to my second sheet here, my IPO5, let me switch to that one, I can automate that process. What I'm going to do is I'm going to take a quick poll here, one just to see if you guys are awake. Let me go ahead and launch this poll. And what I'd like to know is how often or how fast do you think you can attach 8 XREFs on the correct Nolte standard layer? So go ahead and I'll let you guys pick on those. And if you select your appropriate option here, and once I get about 80% voted, I'm going to close that poll. All right, that's about everybody voting, so I'll go ahead and close the poll and then show you what the results are. And what I can see is quite a few of you are delusional and think you can attach those in less than 1 minute. About half of you are realistic. It takes about 1 to 3 minutes to do that. And then for those of you who don't do it too often, it's going to take you a wee bit longer. So what I want to show is how I can guarantee to do it in less than 1 minute. So let me hide my poll, return back to my AutoCAD, and I'm going to do this off the ribbon bar. Okay, so I'm going to click on this little button on the ribbon bar to expand it to see the full ribbon panel, and I'm going to go to the Tools tab, and there's a tool over here called Action Recorder. And what I've done, and let me go ahead and open this up, and I'm going to pin it open. All right, I've recorded some previous actions. I did this when I set up my IP04 sheet, and the first one I do is attach XREF. So the first thing I did is I did the layer command. I made a layer for my XREFs, the Nolte standard layer. Then I attached using the Nolte XR macro, the EXMA drawing. And just to make sure I can see what's going on, I zoomed extents, and then I proceeded to do the XR command with all the other remaining XREFs. So to use this now, what I'm going to do is with that set current, I'm going to hit the play button and try to again, hit the play button, there we go, and it will process through and attach all those XREFs. And somebody time me, so it's about 5 seconds. And when it's done, I get this little notification that I'm finished, and I've now attached all my XREFs. So pretty nice little tool there. Let me go to my layout now, and I want to set up my title blocks here, which I did on the previous drawing. So let me come up, and I've got a sheet set where I again make my XREF layer. I attach the XREF of my sheet border. I zoom extents. I then go to layer 0 and I insert my sheet information. I actually go through and populate some of the attributes. Okay, and I got these set up to actually prompt me. They're going to request user input for those, so we'll go ahead and leave that as it is. So those are going to ask me for user input. It goes through all the other XREFs. I make the viewports. I make 2 viewports, and then I set their scale using the NV setup command, and I set them both at 1 to 40 scale, and then I do a regen all to make sure all of my annotative text and my Civil 3D labels all adjust to that scale. So that's what this command is going to do. Again, kind of keep in your mind how long does it take you to do that normally on your own. So let me select that, and I'll hit the play button, and it'll process through, and it's going to ask me to enter the sheet title. So we'll say yes, provide input. I can't type under stressful situations. Part 2, and we'll go ahead and for the second one I'll use the recorded value, and it'll populate those in, do my 2 viewports, regen, and it's done. And we'll just kind of see what I've put in here. I typed in too much. It didn't quite fit. I'll have to go back and fix that. But so I was again, taking that repetitive process that I do from sheet to sheet to sheet, and by automating it with a macro, I can speed some of that up. All right, let me do just a little quick, how do I create a macro? So let me zoom in here. What I'd like to do is I'd like to insert my north arrow, and I would like to then bring my north arrow out of my model space viewport, place it into paper space. I'll do that with the Express Tool change space command, and then that'll allow me to move my north arrow anywhere I want on my sheet. When using macros, it's best to use the command line versions of the commands. All right, but let me start off. Let's go ahead and I'm going to use the record button here. And while I'm recording, you'll see that the panel here turns kind of this flashing, pulsating pink color, and I also get a red record icon with my crosshairs. All right, so the first thing I'm going to do is the layer command. I'm preceding it with a dash, and I'm going to type it out. I'm going to make a layer, and dash, 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 dash. We'll use on the TX03 layer is where I want to put my north arrow, so we'll go ahead and hit return for that, and then return. So I've got my layer that I want to use. I just use the make option, so that way if that layer doesn't exist in my drawing, it will make that layer. And I'm going to do this twice. I'm going to do it first time using just the plain insert command, which will bring up a dialog. And I come into my dialog, and I'm going to pick my north arrow. I want to specify insertion point on the screen, but I'm going to go ahead and scale that to 40 scale, pick OK, and I need to be in my viewport, so I've already messed up. Let me cancel that. I'm going to stop that. I apologize for that. Let me try this again. I'm going to start off in my viewport, then we'll record. Okay, so let's do layer, make. So I've got my layer, and I'm going to do the insert command. And I want my north arrow. And again, we'll go at 40 scale. And I'll put it at that location. So I've now brought it in. Then I'm going to use the Express Tool change space. And I'm going to select L for the last object and hit return for my default viewport. And then it's now in paper space. Let me stop my macro. And we'll say insert north. All right, the macro name is actually being saved as a file, and because of that, I cannot include spaces in my file name. So I'm going to get this file name, and it's going to save it in my Civil 3D 2009 support actions folder. There is also an Office actions folder at the similar path on the Q drive, where we can then copy these ACTM files to make them available for other users in your office, so we can have it in both locations. All right, so let me pick OK to that. So that saves my macro, and I'll see there's my north arrow. So let me play this back now. So I'm going to be in my viewport, and I'm going to select it up here and hit playback, and it launches the dialog. And this is one of the problems with using the dialogs is I have to provide user input now, but it does allow me to try maybe some different scales here. So let's do it at 20 scale, and it will finish up, and it'll place it in my drawing for me. And so I now have one at 20 scale. So that's using the dialogue. So let me do this once more, but this time I'm going to use the command line version. So let me record my macro again. I'm going to skip the layer part, and I'm just going to use the insertion. So I'm going to do dash insert. And where's my block? And again, I want to type it out because that may not always be my default. And my insertion point, I will pick a point on the screen. Scale factor, I'll go 40 and 40, and rotation angle of 0. And then I'll use the change space again. Last, and then return to finish my command. I will stop recording, and I forgot what I called the other one, so we'll call this one insert north arrow 2. Okay. The benefit of insert north arrow 2 now is it will play and it doesn't prompt me for anything. So by doing it all with command line commands, the command will go much faster, but the only problem with that is I don't get any option in terms of changing the scale or rotation. Okay. If I want to do that, I can come up here and I can actually change the values in the recorded macros. So let's do these at 20. Let me double click on that one and change it to 20. And then we'll play it. Start off in my viewport, then we'll play that one, and you'll see now I get it at 20 scale. I can also do, maybe I want to put it at a different insertion point. I can say, well, let's request user input at this point. So that will now ask me for user input. So this time we'll play it, and we'll provide input. We'll pick insertion point, and now it lets me put it at a different insertion point. So a lot of different variations we can do on this. So again, the idea behind this tool is if you find yourself, especially editing a lot of sheet sets or sheet drawings where you have to repetitively do the same task in each drawing, record the macro on the first drawing, and then when you open up the remaining drawings, you just have to go in and do playback. So it's kind of a nice way for you to do a little automation and programming if you're not a Lisp programmer or if you're not real familiar with doing AutoCAD scripts. This will build that for you. So let me go ahead and close that down. So that was the action recorder, and we looked at that item already. So let's jump now into the annotative text components. Let me switch back to my first sheet. What I've done on this sheet, this is going to be one of my water plans, so I want to annotate some of my water meters and pipe and bends and whatnot with some note callouts and other text. And I've got two viewports here, so let me pick into the larger viewport on the left, and we'll see I've got that one set up at a scale of 1 to 50. And if I pick on the smaller viewport over here on the right side, that one's set up at a scale of 1 to 10. What I want to show is how we can use annotative text to control the appearance of our text and dimensions within these two different viewports. So let me switch over to model space to do some drafting work here. So I'm going to be in my TX03 layer still, so I'm going to do some annotation on that layer. I'm going to switch my ribbon bar here to the Annotate tab, and I really like this because it shows me all my different annotation components in one location, and I don't have to jump back and forth between a bunch of toolbars. All right, what we'll see on here is that for my different text styles, you notice that they all have this little cross-section of a scale. All right, I've also have created my style names, and the standard I'm kind of promoting here for Nolte is that we put a character on the suffix of our styles just to indicate to us that these are annotative. Okay, I didn't do that on my water notes one here, but we'll forgive myself on that one. But they have this scale value on here. And the way you create an annotative text object is, let me go into my text style command. And what we'll see is, let me first look at our L100. And this is what we're used to using, set up by Land Desktop for us in all these years. The L100 is using a simplex font, but we always had to come in and specify a text height based on what we think our drawing scale is going to be. So it actually puts a fixed height on it. All right, with an annotative object, or annotative style, let me pick on the L100A, and again you can see the little icons here indicating that they're annotative. For the size, you toggle on this annotative option here, and then you enter in what the plotted text height is, or the paper space height, and we typically do paper space in inches. So for an L100, I want that to be 0.1 units high, or 0.1 inches high. And that's all we need to do to create an annotative text. So make sure that one's current and close down my dialog. And I've done the same thing for my dimension styles here. So let me go ahead and look at the edit dimension styles for that, and we'll come in and modify. And the two things I'm doing for a dimension style is under text is I want to make sure I'm using an annotative text style so that as I change my drawing scales, the text will update appropriately. And then on the Fit tab, there's an option here where I specify my scale, and I've also toggled on annotative here. And what we'll see is we look at our different style settings that all of the spaces and heights that I've entered in are defined in paper space, or my plotted inch units. So like my arrow size, I have 0.18 inches for my arrow size. And if I come back over to the Fit tab, we'll see using this annotative option, it will then multiply those based on the annotative scale that we see down at the bottom of our drawing. All right, so let's pick OK to that. Let's put in a little bit of annotation here. So I'm going to start off, and I'm going to actually do work first at 50 scale. So I'm going to set my drawing to 50 scale. All right. You'll also see my line types modified, and there is a new variable called MSLT scale. And we'll see I have that turned on. Very similar functionality to PSLT scale, but let me check my LT scale value, and that is also set to 1. So what will happen then, watch these easement lines here, as I switch back to my 10 scale, you'll see that my line types regen in model space just like they do when we use the PS-LT scale variable in paper space. All right, so I'm going to be at 50 scale, and I want to make some MText here, and we'll put a big note here, and I'll say see detail to right or whatever, something like that. And let's put on the background mask. Nope, that's my pick. All right, so that's at 50 scale, and what I'll do also is I want to annotate maybe some of my water meters here. And I'm also going to introduce this function here called a multi-leader. This is a new leadering tool that's separate from dimensioning, but it has a similar behavior, but it's purely for creating leaders, and it's called a multi-leader because I can do multiple arrowheads off a single leader. I'm going to start off, let's look at my style here. And I've created a style called Water Notes, and it's an annotative style. And just like my dimension dialog, I can go into the modify here. And we'll go through the tabs real quickly. Leader format, I can do straight or splined leaders, or I can say none whatsoever. I'm going to make my leader red so I know it'll plot with a thin pin weight using palette A. I can specify my arrowhead type and my size just like I can in dimensioning. And I can also put a break in my leader. The leader structure, I can predefine how many points you can pick with this leader. I can have some default segment angles, and then also how long or how large the landing is. And again, here I have it set to annotative. And then the context, this leader is inserting a block, and the block I'm using is just one of the default ones called circle, but I can use any blocks that I want. And then it's using the center of the block to insert it, so it'll place it appropriately to my landing. And then I'm going to use the color by layer for my block, so it'll take on the properties of my TX03 layer here. All right, so let me go ahead and close that down. I'm going to attach a multi-leader, and the nice thing I like about the ribbon is you just go right for the big button here. So I'm going to grab the multi-leader option, and I'm going to say I want to leader off that guy there. And these are going to be general notes, so I'm going to say water meters are note 12. Okay, and I apologize, my arrowheads don't regen right away when I do this. Again, I got just some display issues with my video card and GoToWebinar here. So I've got my leader in, and what I can do is I want to point to that meter also. I can come in here and I can use this button to add multiple leaders. So I'll click on Add. I will select my multi-leader object, and you'll see I can now drag another one off, and I can keep picking and pointing and adding a whole bunch of these. All right, so maybe let me do, again, the same thing here. We'll label these as 12 as well. And again, I'll attach another segment off of that. All right, so I can now quickly annotate and put in all these different leader objects. And we'll come in, let's do a few more over here. Maybe we'll do some of these valves here. So let me do a leader on this valve. And valves are 5, and then we'll also add one in off this T, and we'll say a T is a 7, and then I've got another valve here, and we'll go ahead and throw that one in, and we'll do a 5 there. And bear with me as I regen that so we can see all my arrowheads. All right, a little messy, but some of the other buttons that I have on here is we got this option here to align, and what I can do is say we'll take these 3 multi-leaders now, and I want to align them relative to this one, and as you see, as I drag my crosshair, you'll see that they will all line up with each other, and if I turn on ortho, I can place them all in a nice straight line, so it's a nice quick way to get my leaders looking real nice. I can also do a variation of this where I can say we'll grab these items here, and I can go into options, and I can say we'll make all of the leader segments parallel, and I can say let's align them. We'll go to that one there. Okay, kind of messy. It did make them all parallel, but now they're all overlapping and touching each other, so I'm going to undo that. I'll leave it like this. The other thing I can do with this is I can combine them. So I can take maybe these two and combine them to make it a little bit easier to read. So I'm going to say grab these ones. So I'll say I'll pick the first one and the second one, hit enter, and then I can pick a new insertion point, and it will then combine those two callouts into a single leader, and the arrowhead will be pointing to the location of the last multi-leader object that was selected. Okay, so some real nice functionality that we can do with these multi-leaders. And that's all I'm going to show on these for now. So let's kind of return back now to this annotative component. Thus far, we've been annotating at 50 scale, but I would now like to do some work at 10 scale. And what's going on with these buttons down here in the lower left corner of our screen, there's two additional buttons that are adjacent to our annotation scale tab here. The first button says show annotative objects for all scales, and that is actually on. That's kind of hard to determine that it's on or off, but the little light bulb is orange here, or glowing. So if I click on that to turn it off, we'll see that really no effect happened because these are all at 50 scale here. So let me turn that back on. And the other button here says automatically add scales to objects when you change your scale. And you have to watch doing this because it'll take any annotative object and add whatever view scale you change to. I do recommend leaving this one turned off, and you can see it's kind of grayed out when it's off. If I turn it on, you see it's solid and has a little bright lightning bolt on it. But I want to leave that one turned off because I don't want these automatically showing up when I work at 50 or at 10 scale. So let me change to 10 scale now, and we'll see that if I click off the visibility now, all my 50 scale annotation disappears. So we're only seeing now the 10 scale annotations. So let me come in here and I'll throw in some more multi-leaders. Maybe we got some multi-leaders for bends here. So let me turn ortho off. And we'll just we'll say bends are going to be call out 22. And we'll just throw in a couple more here. All right, so that's our call out for a bend. Maybe I want to put in some dimensioning here. So I'll come in and I'll do an align dimension, and we'll just go from our curved face perpendicular to my pipe, and we'll place our dimension there, and then do all of these at 10 scale. All right, so there's my 10 scale annotation, and then when I go back to 50, there's my 50 scale annotation. And the nice thing about this is I'm doing this all on a single layer. All right, I'm not having to manipulate one layer for 10 scale, another layer for 20 scale. Let me jump back over to my layout now, and what we'll see is based on the view scales, my 50 scale viewport's only showing me the annotation I did at 50 scale, whereas my 10 scale viewport's only showing me the annotation I did at 10 scale. All right. However, these two water meters show up in both viewports. So let me do this. Let me come into my drawing now. I'm going to change back to 10 scale because I want to be working in terms of 10 scale. What I'd like to do is this call out that I had here for these 2 meters, I'd also like to use those at 10 scale. So I'm going to come over and I'm going to say show all annotation. So I'll click on this button here. And what I can do is pick on this annotative object, and I can either use my toolbar, and this big button here is add current scale, or I can right click with it selected, and I have annotative objects, and I can add current scale, which will add 10 scale to this one, or I can go into my dialog here to add and delete scales. So let me show you that. So in the dialog, I can come in here and I can say, well, add, and I want to use 10 scale. All right, so that will add. I can also delete scales by picking it and hitting the delete button. Okay, so now I can see here's what this one looks like at 10 scale. If I select it, it will give me a ghost showing me all versions, but I can actually grip at it and move my 10 scale version to a different location. Okay, so there it is at 10 scale. I change my annotation scale back to 50, and there's the 50 scale version. So the same leader or annotative object, whether it's a multi-leader, dimension, or text, I can have it display in multiple drawing annotation scales. So now let me go back to my layouts, and then what we'll see is those labels will now show up at 10 scale, And if I pan over, and we see that it also shows up over here at 50 scale. All right, let me go ahead and go back to that. A couple other things we can do with the annotation scale is this custom button lets us modify this list. And probably by default, your annotation list is going to have a dozen proportional scales that we use going from inch to feet, plus it will also have architectural scales, and you can come in and say, well, you know what, I'm never going to do anything at 2 scale in this drawing, so I'm going to delete that one. I'm not going to use 30 scale in this drawing, I can delete that one, and we'll never use 100, so I can delete that one, and I'll pick OK. And then the nice thing about that then is you can minimize or shorten this list. You can also hide any annotation scales that are coming in from external references. So if I turn that off, yeah, I don't have any in my XREF. So it's just a nice way to kind of pick and choose. As we evolve our template drawings, we'll slowly compress this list down to our typical civil CAD scales that we like to use. All right, so let me check my notes real quick. That looks good. I think that's all I'm going to do on annotative scales. Definitely encourage as we migrate to 2009 that we start using this functionality more and more. It makes it a little bit easier to set up and control the display of our text. All right, I want to look at some MText functions now here. So let me find my open button, and we'll come back to our master folder, and I've got some working drawings here for playing with MText. All right, MText object looks just like an MText object in the past. Let me double click to edit this guy, and the first thing you're going to see is, whoop, let me get in here and pan, didn't mean to pick on that, is we now get little underlines just like we're used to in all the Microsoft Office products that indicate where I have a misspelled word. Okay, so I can come in here and see, well, construction, I fat-fingered it and got my C and T mix, so I can pick it and right-click, and it will actually give me suggestions in my menu, just like we get in all of our Word, our Office products here. So let me pick on construction, so that fixes that one. But you know what, backflow is a word I use all the time, so I'm going to actually add that one to my custom dictionary. So I go ahead and add that, and that one will now highlight, and I can go in and add these other ones, or I can just kind of ignore them. So we now have a spell check utility in AutoCAD that behaves just like what we're used to in all of our Microsoft products. Other thing I want to show here, let me zoom back out and get into editing. Come on. All right. I can now adjust the height. That's not going to do that. Let me bring my toolbar up. Oh, I've got no columns turned on. We can now do multiple columns. So I'm going to come in here and do a dynamic column, and I'm going to do what's called auto height. And it's not letting me zoom in all the way. There we go. That's what I needed. All right, so when I'm doing with this turned on here, and again, let me bring that so you can see that difference from my toolbars, is this column buttons, I've got it set to an auto height option, and if I click on this slider, you'll see that it will wrap it to multiple columns based on what I drag here, and they all will have the same height. That makes it an auto height. If I change it to manual height, you'll see I get a slider for each column, and I can pick and drag and make each one whatever height I need. So you can kind of imagine maybe this is a detail sheet or a general note sheet with some detail images here. I can do the entire sheet as a single MText object, and then I can pick and drag each column to get it to wrap around any images or other items that I have on my sheet. I can use this slider over here to change the width of the overall MText object, and then I can use this slider here to change the width of my columns. Okay, so if I scrunch it up, I can change the gap between the columns. That's called the gutter, and then I can use this one to change the overall width of each column. All right, so that's the new dynamic columns. If I do a static column, I can force it and say I always want 2 columns. I can change the height of both, but I will always have 2 columns no matter how I type that in there. Okay, so let me go ahead. I'm going to go back to auto height dynamic. Seems to be the one I like the most. All right. One last thing I'm going to show on MText, save changes, yes. All right, is in terms of formatting now, so let me come back in and get a little closer here, is we now have a button here where we can do what's called paragraph-based formatting, and the functionality I like on that is I can now set what the spacing is between my paragraphs. So this gap that you see in between our different paragraphs, I can now control, and I don't have to put in blank lines anymore. So let me go maybe a little bit bigger spacing here. I'll go to 4, and you'll see I get a much larger gap. As my sheet gets more complex, I can come in here and say, well, now let me set that back to 1.5, and you'll see that the gaps between my different paragraphs will compress. So it just gives you a little bit more control over the formatting of our multi-MText paragraph objects here. All right, so that's the MText stuff. Jumping right along here, let me open up another file and a couple of new things on dimensioning. So I got a drawing here with dimensions. A couple of things you're going to see is, again, going off our dimension toolbar, if I do a radial dimension here, I can actually now pick a point off my arc, and we now get this arc extension line, which is something we didn't have in the past. So that's kind of a neat function there. And let's come over here. We've got this one down here. Under dimensions, we will see if I come into my button down here, I can now add a jog to my dimension line. So let me pick on that one, and I'll grab that segment there, and I'll place it right here. And I can now add a jog. So if I had a broken, maybe a break in my model here, didn't like that, so I can't break my model because it's associative. But if I had a gap in my object, I could then also do a gap in my dimension, and I can grip edit that and slide it anywhere along the line. And if I want to remove it, I can right-click on it, and nope, I can't remove it that way. I have to come back to my jog, select my line, and then I can do R for remove. Try it again. R for remove. Okay, let me try this one last time. Jog line. R for remove. There we go. And pick my line, and it will remove that from my dimension line. So you do R first and then the command. Last thing I want to show on dimensioning is we now also have an option here with this button to add breaks to our dimension line. So let me go ahead and select that button here, and I'm going to select my dimension. So I want to break this one. And then it's going to ask me to break at, so I'm going to go ahead and pick on that one there and hit return, and you'll see it adds a nice gap between the objects. Okay, and again, I can move these around, and that will update. Let me do on this one here, maybe I want to break it where it goes over this rectangle here on my model. So I'll say break. I'm going to pick this one, and I'm going to do the automatic option, and what it'll do is it'll break it automatically wherever it crosses another entity in my drawing, so it adds in all those gaps, and I hope you can see that clearly on the screen here. What's really neat about this is if I move this object off to here, the gaps will heal, and if I move it again, if I place it back, the gaps will reappear. So while it's in automatic mode, the gaps will adjust with my object. So maybe I'll move it down, and you'll see those gaps will go with it. So some real nice functionality for dealing with just some of the aesthetic components of dimensioning. All right. Flying along here. Let me close this one down, keep my system a little cleaner. And we'll go ahead and close that one down too. And I want to look a little bit at some table functions here. So let me open up. I got a drawing with some tables in it. All right. Starting over here, autofill. Just like in an Excel spreadsheet, I can now grip the corner of a range of cells and drag it down, and it will populate the rest of the cells. So let me pick these two cells here. So I got those will establish my pattern, And then I get this grip down in the bottom right corner. If I pick on that and drag, you'll see my little tooltip increments as I pull it down, and then I can pick into the final cell, and then I'll hit escape to deselect my table, and it will then populate those values for me. So that's the autofill functionality. Come over here, let's do a little bit on formatting now. So I've got my price columns here. So actually let me select all of those. I'm going to right click, and I can go into data format, and one of the things they've added now is I now have a currency option that we did not have in 2007. To do that in 2007, we had to modify with the additional formats and actually put in a $ prefix, but now they've added the currency option so I can quickly apply that formatting to my object. I can also go in, if we look at our table styles here, let me go ahead and modify my styles, and I've got my material. I forgot which one I'm looking at. There it is, my point style here. I'm going to modify that. Is I can come in here now and create my own cell formatting. So we have the defaults that we're used to in 2007. We have the data option, the header option, and the title option, but we can now also create our own style where we can add in some different components here. All right, so maybe I'm going to come in and say, well, let's do, for this style, let's add in some border functionality, and I'm going to put in see if I can find, double line, that's what I'm looking for. So I want to put in the double line option, and I'll put that at the top of the border. Okay, actually I want that to be red, so we'll add that back to the top. So I've added in a double line to my style. Okay, and then if I select my table now, let me pick this row, and I can come now into cell styles. Oops, I'm using a different table style here, but I have a similar style created here called total. I'll click on that, and it will format that range of cells to where they now get that double line parameter. So I can again just real easily select a couple of cells, right click, and change what style those cells are using. So I can go there's using the double, or I can right click and say go back to the data format. So we can do what's called named formatting, so we're no longer stuck with just the 3 types of formats and then having to go in and manually modifying each range that we want to modify. Okay, so that's the formatting. Other things I can do with tables is we get a new grip at the bottom of our table. We get this grip down here. It's called a break grip, and if I click on that and start to shrink my table height, it will actually split it to where I get a second table here. And I can bring it back the other way here. So I can grip edit and compress and shrink my table. I can control the behavior using my properties window here. So let me bring up the properties. And it'd probably be nice if that was visible on my screen. And with my table selected, there's a section down here called table breaks, and I can turn it on and off. I can indicate which side it goes to. So I can go right, down, or left. We'll keep it to the right. And I can tell it whether or not I want to see my labels repeated at the top. And I can specify what the break height is, or I can change the spacing between it and say maybe only go 20, and I can make them a little bit closer to each other. Okay, so that's the different options for controlling that split table. Behaviorally, though, it is a single table, so it'll all behave and edit just like a single table. All right. Other items. Moving along here. Hopefully you guys are keeping up with me. Got about 10 minutes and then we'll wrap it up here. But last thing I want to show for tables is we can now link our tables to an Excel spreadsheet, which is a new functionality. And I've actually got one table already linked here. My table or my spreadsheet's been updated, so it's telling me, hey, this has been modified, just kind of like an XREF you want to update. So we'll go ahead and hit update, and it will regen my table, and you can see the values have changed. But let me show you how I created this. So I'm going to come in here now, and there's a button here in my table palette, and I'm going to select here. It's called Data Link, and we can see I've got one data link called Material Table, and I'm going to create a new one, and we'll call it my link. All right, and we'll go ahead and work through our process here, and what we want to do is select which file we want to link to. So I'm going to come to my project here on the N drive. That's a nasty view. There we go. And we're in the 109, and I've got some documents, I've got some estimates, and I've got this spreadsheet here with our material table. So I'll pick OK to that. It will read the table. I'm going to keep the full path. I can tell it which Excel sheet to link to. I've got multiple sheets, or I can just say named ranges or specific ranges, and I get a little sample of here's what that's going to look like. Here's the data that it's reading, so we'll pick OK to that. I now have the second link created. So here's the first link I did, here's the second link. They're actually both linked to the same spreadsheet. Let me pick OK to that. I can now come in and create a table, and instead of picking a point on the screen and specifying it, I can say use a data link. So I'm going to say create a table from my data link. I'll go to the one I just made. I'll pick OK, and I'll place it here in my drawing. Okay. Kind of messy. My uses the formatting for my text here. So let me come in and remove all property overrides. There we go. So I can now see what it looks like using my table style as opposed to the properties of the spreadsheet. All right. So we now have this table linked to our spreadsheet. I'm going to pick it and right-click, and let me not pick it. I need to be actually in a cell. So now we'll right-click. With one of the cells selected, I will get a data link option in my menu, and I can actually go and open up the data link file in Microsoft Excel. And hopefully that'll work here. There we go. Kind of have to kick it a couple of times. Let me shrink this down so we can see what's going on in both of these here. All right, so I'm going to come in and maybe we'll change the quantity. So instead of 33 item Fs, we're going to have 200 of those. All right, and that'll equate out to $4,000. I will save that. And then as soon as I save it and come back into my drawing, my AutoCAD's going to recognize that that file has changed, and it's going to ask me, do you want to update the tables? All right, so I'll say, sure, update data links, and it will go through, update both data links. And there we go. So that value is now 200. The quantity is 4,000. Same thing, I can actually change quantities here in my drawing. You'll also see on my icon when I pick in a cell, it's showing me that the cell is locked, and it also has that little chain link icon indicating that it's linked back to the database. But if I unlock it, I can actually change the value of the cell, and I can come in here and I can update or upload my changes from my drawing back to the source file. Okay, it won't do it right now because I have the source file open in Excel, or I can go and I can download changes from the spreadsheet. Okay, the process I've been working with that I recommend is that you do all your edits in the spreadsheet and then update your drawing whenever those changes occur in the spreadsheet. So that's called a data link. There's one more table function, but I'm not going to have time to show it today. I'm going to skip that one. You can now do a data extraction, which is this button here, and it's kind of like an attribute extraction, but it's a little more sophisticated in I can extract object data from my drawing. I can link it to a spreadsheet maybe to get dollar values or quantity parameters. I can link those together and generate a table based on that extracted data, and then if I ever change any of the elements or objects in my drawing that were used, the table itself will update. Okay, it takes me about 10 minutes to demo that. What we'll probably do is do in the future here some lunchtime brown bag sessions where we'll let you take a look at and show you some of these newer functions. What I'd like to do to wrap up today is with the PDF tools. All right, so let me jump back over to this sheet here. All right, and we'll go into my layout. And this is only going to apply if you use Civil 3D version of AutoCAD. So when you use Catapult instead of the Land Desktop Companion 2009, you have to go into the Civil 3D one to get these functions. And what I want to show is if I come in and plot, Okay, and I want to use now, there's a new driver here called the DWG to PDF bonus pack is what they're calling it. Okay, the default PDF one is just the DWG to PDF. This is the one that we had in 2007. But with this one, if I come into the properties and then I go to custom properties, and I'll go ahead and edit those, is I can now control the resolution. And we'll see if I pick on this now. 600 DPI is going to give you a real good resolution and a small file size. But if you want, you can go all the way up to 4800 DPI or all the way down to 150. And obviously the file size is going to expand and shrink based on the option you pick. But we can also do it for gradients. But then we also have the same options here for our raster images. So we can control our file size if we have aerial photography embedded in the image. All right, font handling. If you are using true type fonts in your drawing, we can capture those fonts and they will appear as text in the PDF file, meaning you can search for it, you can locate it, extract it right out of the PDF file. And then the last thing I want to show here is we have an option to include layer information. All right, so we'll go ahead and pick those and leave those on, and everything looks good. Let me do a quick preview to make sure I got the right settings here. So that looks good. We'll plot that. And let me just throw this on my desktop. So IPO4 on the desktop. We'll save that one. The driver's also set up to open my PDF viewer as soon as that comes in, which is over on the other screen. So let me pull it over here. Yep. Let's try that again. So here is my sheet now that was generated. But the neat thing about this is it now has layer information in it. And I can actually come in here and I can turn off layers. So let me come in and start turning off some of my water layers. So you'll see as I click them and turn them off, my water layers will disappear. Okay, maybe I'll click off some of the storm drain layers here. So as I work my way through, that'll disappear. I'll turn off my sanitary layers. All right, am I missing a few? Oh, I got existing ones still showing up. Oh, here they are. Okay, so you kind of get the idea as I work my way through here. I can turn on and off the different layers. I can print this right out of my PDF viewer here, out of my Adobe viewer. Okay, but what's real neat about these PDFs in this version of Civil 3D is is I can now do what's called an underlay. All right, I got a drawing set up for this already. All right, oh, I already got my underlay in here. That's not good. Let me go into my XREF dialog here. Okay, so I've got my underlay already in here, so let me actually detach it and show you how I attach that. All right, so I've got my drawing, I got my line work. I can come up to my insert or attach button here, and in Civil 3D 2009, you will have this option to attach a PDF. All right, and I've got my PDF file in my master folder, so we'll go ahead and open that. Your insertion dialog is very similar to when you insert a DWF. If you've got multiple sheets, you can pick and choose which sheet it is that you attach, and I, for the life of me, don't remember which one's which, so I'm going to gamble and go for sheet number 2 here. Insertion point, I'm going to go ahead and well, my drawing should be at coordinates, so I'm going to leave that off. And I have to remember what my scale is. Tell you what, before I get too far here, let me open up my PDF here, just check it real quick. Okay, so I want sheet 1 is the one I wanted. So sheet 1, and let me see what I did. It helps to know what your scale is so we can insert it correctly. Oh, I don't have scale on here. I think I did these. I'm going to guess 1 to 100, I hope. We'll soon find out. All right. So let me again attach my PDF. So again, that's this option here to attach PDF. And I want sheet 1, and we'll leave the insertion point, and we'll go ahead and pick OK to that. Okay, and I was way off. All right, anyhow, you have to know your scale and insertion. It will then come in. All right, so I kind of did the backwards one here. I apologize I thought I had that information written down, but I don't, so I need to figure that out. So if let me look at see if that shows up in my properties here. Okay, so I did have to pick an insertion point. Oh, it's 40 scale. All right, so it helped to know these things. With this attached now, there's some commands I can do. There's a PDF layer. Oh, no, there is not. And again, I hate floundering on this. So let me go to my help. Oh, is our network not working here? Okay, is anyone, are we still live here? I sure hope you can see me. Anyhow, there's some commands where I can do the PDF layers. I can clip my PDFs, and I can also yeah, I didn't get them on my tabs here. I can also then change the transparency or the intensity of the PDF also to scale it down and scale it back. All right. Well, I apologize for that little fumble there. Again, look at the handouts that are available on the CAD website, the CAD support page, and there are some demonstrations of using these PDF tools there. But just to make you aware of that. Time-wise, I see that I'm about a minute over, so I'll go ahead and wrap it up now. I do appreciate you all attending today's session and look forward to our future sessions. Thank you very much.